Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to BlueLink's Netcast interview series. Today, our guest for an interview is Tomas Vaic, co-chairman for the European Greens, farmer, and someone who knows about green policies on a European level, but also recently visited Bulgaria just in the wake of the parliamentary elections in July. We are very happy to have you with us today and hear from you. Maybe perhaps it would be interesting to share your overall impression after two consecutive parliamentary elections and a very long, almost a year-long civic protest. What was your sense of the atmosphere within the Green movement in Bulgaria when you visited in July?
My overall impression to what happens in Bulgaria in the political scene is that I see citizens more and more standing up for modern, effective, transparent state, for real and substantive measurements against corruption, for an orientation of the statehood towards the future and already present obstacles that we have, literally climate change, the global climate crisis, but also other environmental topics, very much also on human rights. So I find it quite fascinating how strong the population is voting for change and has been voting for change twice now. And I see this as an overall very positive process.
Could you compare this process to what you have observed on a European level, maybe? Would there be a reason to say there is a revitalization of green politics on Eastern European or European scale?
Yes, indeed. In the last European elections, the Greens had a very good result overall, but mainly in 12 out of 27 countries, which shows that there's still a lack of clear green policies and political office, especially in the former Eastern European countries. It's different in different countries. It also depends on the society and where the society is. Unfortunately, in many of the East European countries, there's still a lot of poverty. So there are a lot of people that have to struggle on a daily basis to get their families running, to feed their kids. And as long as you are in such kind of dramatic situation, it's not easy to actually think about bigger environmental topics, bigger climate topics. But unfortunately, that is changing more and more. There's a new middle class growing also in former Eastern European countries, and the threats of global crisis and of extreme weather, of drought, of lack of water, and then again, masses of water that causes floods like we've seen in Germany just in the last days. This wakes up a lot of people, and this shows to a lot of people that it's really about fighting for our children and grandchildren, next generations, possibilities to live on a lively planet. And through this also there's a new, I would say, dynamic within green politics, but also due to human rights, to social justice, which are, I would say, the second most important topics that we European Greens work on.
It's very interesting. You are actually focusing on this, I would say, dichotomy, which we can observe in Bulgaria also within the green movement itself. There are still many voices that say we need to first focus on getting rich, on upgrading the economy and the incomes of people to the West European levels, and then we can think of poverty and we can think of human rights. But now we need to focus on a more narrow agenda, perhaps related to only clearly environmental issues. So how is this dilemma resolved in the European Greens experience, this controversy?
First of all, these two topics are heavily interlinked with each other. A clean environment, a livelihood also brings people into the country, brings businesses into the country, brings academia into the country. It's very well related to the quality of life a country offers. Also, climate change and global crisis and all the measurements that have to be taken now are very linked to economical development. You can see that those companies that go environmental and that change their way of production, their way of energy consumption and so on, are the more successful ones also on the markets. It's also linked to workplaces. Let's take the example of agriculture. A more diverse, less monoculture, more structured landscape, more, let's say, ecological agriculture. And it does not always have to be all the way down to organic. There's also a lot of ecological techniques in conventional agriculture. One of the results is you need more workforce on the land, and this creates a lot of new jobs. If you see all the transition from the old energy sector, coal power plants, nuclear power plants, to renewable energy, whether it's wind or solar energy, you need a lot more people installing that, maintaining it. You create an income for normal citizens, for small households. So the social question, the economical question, and the ecological question are directly linked to each other. And it's not one against each other, but the solutions can only be together.
Yes, it's a very convincing argument when the green environmental ideas can be combined with also green economy. But one aspect of the spectrum remains quite difficult for many people to understand, which is human rights. Human rights, social rights, they say, why is this a green issue? Why should we Greens deal with things like LGBT rights or minority rights? Do you have an answer for those questions?
Very clearly, the Greens were born, if you want so, out of three different movements. One was the environmental movement. The second one was the peace movement. So also there the question, how do we deal with our neighbors? How do we see militarization? How do we see diplomatics? And the third issue very clearly is human rights. Or was it the women's movement, the fight for equal rights for women, but also for minorities? And there we started in the, let's say, home minorities in the countries, as we have a Slovenian minority in Austria, an Hungarian minority, a Croatian minority, or a Roma minority, so that fight for equal rights for every citizen, and for states that are not built on a nationalistic concept or an ethnic concept, but built on the concept of citizenship and of equal rights to every citizen of a state. This is one of the core and funding values of the Green movement. And I know Greens are very much associated with the environmental topics, which is fine, but the social ones are key. And if we talk about minorities, or let's say smaller groups of society, for me, it doesn't make a big difference whether we fight for women's rights or for LGBT rights or for rights of the Roma community. It's about granting every single citizen, beyond gender, beyond sexual orientation, and beyond ethnic identification, the same equal rights to participate in our common statehoods.
Thank you. Bulgaria now has a new parliament. We have, again, 4 Green members of parliament. Not long ago, the Bulgarian government was the only one in Europe which actually did not vote for the recent ambitious targets of the European Commission regarding climate change. What are the hopes, what are the priorities for the European Greens that you can hope now to get a bit more support from Bulgaria on?
Our priorities are clearly, first of all, effective, transparent, and functioning state institutions. That's very much linked with, first of all, our common rule of law that we have in the European Union. And it's very important that all member states at least maintain a minimum standard that we all share. But it's also about the use of European money now through the Recovery and Resilience Fund, which is an historic first time ever move of all the European countries to stand together and to finance the recovery of the crisis together, so the more wealthy states stand next to the bit least wealthy states to stem this crisis together. And there's a lot of money coming to Bulgaria, and we need to make sure that this money is used for the purpose, is really meeting citizens' needs, and is not disappearing in some oligarchs or criminal organizations' secret pockets. And for this, we need a transparent and effective state. Second is all the activities around climate crisis. And it's not a question of choice nowadays. It's not a question of ideology. It's a question of science and of maintaining a good livelihood for next generations. And this is where the ideas of conservatism and the ideas of progressives and the ideas of Greens actually find together to a common program. It's not the Greens running the European Union. So it's the conservatives and the social democrats and the liberals having the most powerful positions within the union. But it's so clear that if we do not at least reduce the impact of global warming and global climate crisis, we are all going to end up in an ongoing crisis. And what we have seen the last year with COVID was just the first taste on how our lives could look like. And so we really need this common effort to combat global warming.
Yes, a good finishing point, I would say. We certainly want to see the good outcomes from this common effort. And we at Blue Link, working with the Green European Foundation, have been keeping an eye on how the European recovery funds and the green funds have been planned and used in Bulgaria. Thank you for this brief interview, and thank you for setting your eye on Bulgaria. We reserve the right to talk to you in a year's time and see how the new wave in Bulgarian politics has become greener or not. Hopefully, yes. Thank you very much one more time. Tomas Vaic, co-chairperson for the European Greens, and thank you for our viewers online. Stay with Blue Link, and goodbye for now.
All the best to Bulgaria, and thank you for the invitation.